So it was probably, it was late 1997. Like I said, there's good memories in there. But there's a lot of times when things weren't very good or very pleasant. Things happened. By this time, my dad was completely estranged from both of his daughters, my sisters, and I tried to maintain a good relationship with him, but he would try to use me to get to them, reconcile with them, or just to talk really bad about them, stuff like that. And it was just an awkward situation. A couple times I did try to help be the middleman and try to bridge the gap between them, but ultimately things just ended up getting worse. And so by the end of 97 into 98, basically we just hadn't talked, and we didn't talk for a good couple of years later after that. And then when we did, that's when it started, just the one phone call a year, and sometimes not even every year. And but like I mentioned earlier, I tried to make sure that I always knew where he was, and make sure that he knew how to get a hold of me if he needed to. So I can't remember what year exactly it was that he ended up being divorced from Debbie, and then moved out to Condi, South Dakota. I think that year is in his obituary, but I just don't remember it off the top of my head. But anyhow, he moved out to Condi, South Dakota, and I believe he and Kathy had met at a canine training class that they both attended. So they had that in common, and the law enforcement thing in common. So, and just very little, like he moved to South Dakota, and it was just like, I had his phone number, he had mine, but we just never talked. Like, years went by, and if we did talk, he was not really interested, and it was just very shallow and stuff. Or other times it would just be a very, very unpleasant thing. And so this went on for, like I said, a good 15 years. In the meantime, I also was divorced and then remarried in 2004 to my wife Crystal, and he didn't really know. I told him in a phone call one time, but and then we had my son Jordan, born in 2007, my daughter Aiden, born in 2009, and again, no contact with my dad at all, but sort of, let him know. But we would continue these, we never talked on Father's Day, but like if it was my birthday, he might call me. If it was his birthday, I might call him, or it'd just be a random time. And, never knew if those conversations were going to go good or bad. And when they were bad, they were really bad. He was just not fun to talk to at all. And some of the stuff he would say would be very hurtful. and he knew my buttons. The best way to upset me would be to, talk crap, for lack of a better word, about people that I cared about. And so he would do that often, on and on about his ex-wives, including my mom, and about my sisters, and he would just do that. And so anyway, 2015, I happily remarried to a couple kids, and was living in Clackamas, Oregon. And I remember this particular day well. This is a very marked turning point in things. I had gone to Les Schwab. I had to get the brakes done. They were doing the brakes on my vehicle, and it's Les Schwab Tire Center. So I had my vehicle there, and I was sitting in the lobby waiting for it to be done. And my phone rang, and it was my dad. I hadn't talked to him for, a year and a half, 2 years at that point, whatever it was. And starts out pleasant enough to where, but it was all shallow stuff. How's the weather? How's work? Stuff like that. And but then it just turned, and he started just attacking me through the phone again, like he had so many different times. And he started talking about something that just hit a nerve with me. And I got up, I was in the waiting room there at Les Schwab, and I got up and I walked out into the parking lot. And for the first time in my life, I unloaded on him through the phone. I had never done that. He'd always been so intimidating to me. I could never stand up to him, and I never did stand up to him until that moment. And I went off on him, and so he hung up on me. And I immediately called back, and this is where the turning point happened. To his credit, he answered the phone. I was actually surprised he did, because he just, I had gone off on him, and he hung up on me. He was good at being the one on the offensive, but he didn't like me and talk to him like I was talking to him. So he hung up. When I called back, he answered, and I immediately said, "You don't hang up on me." And he just paused, and he said, "Okay, son." And I just told him, I finished saying what I had to say, and I told him, "I'm not doing this anymore, Dad. We are not going to do this anymore. And if you never want to talk to me again, then that's your choice. But I've made all these efforts to always keep in touch with you, let you know where I live, let you know my phone number, all these things." And I said, "But I'm not going to do this anymore with these phone calls and your verbal abuse and all this stuff, your emotional stuff." And he just said, "Okay." And that conversation ended very well. We had, we talked, change the subject back to things a little bit more pleasant. And we hung up, and I told him I loved him, and he said he loved me too. And he said, "Let's keep in touch better." I said, "Okay." So we hung up, And after that, we started talking about, once a month at least, and pleasant conversations. Some of them not very, didn't have to talk about a lot of substance or whatever, but never again did we have a confrontational conversation like we had been having. And so that was just a real turning point in our relationship, where he no longer saw me as just his little boy that's going to cower to him, but it's like he saw me as a man now. I stood up as a man and to him, and he was still my dad and I was still his son, but he looked at me as an adult, like his peer almost. And that was a turning point in our relationship. So anyhow, I wanted to share that because with all of this, my goal is not to make my dad look bad, because he had so many good and wonderful qualities, and all of us, including me, have skeletons in our closet. We have bad qualities. We don't always do or say the things that we should, and so we shouldn't point the finger at other people. We should focus on, just in terms of finding fault, pointing the finger at ourselves. But I wanted to share that story because you might be in a relationship. You might have relationships where you're estranged from somebody you love, somebody who's a close family member, or used to be a close family member. And, just know that it's never too late. Until somebody dies, then it's too late. But until then, there's hope. But sometimes you have to kind of take matters into your own hand, so to speak. And that's what I had to do. It took me really standing up to my dad. If we were in person, I would have been prepared to fight. That's how mad I was at that time, and thankfully it never came to that. But we ended up getting on the same page, so that was a real positive for me and for him. And we talked about that later. So anyway, I'll stop on that note and get back to you shortly.